pandemic, many people are turning to gardening because they are forced to spend more time at home. Garden centers are busier than ever, helping gardeners discover their green thumb. I'm with Allison Shannon today at Sun Harvest Family Greenhouse. And since COVID-19, Allison, can you describe what has happened to the growing season?
Well, the growing season at the beginning, when COVID-19, the pandemic sort of struck, everything was very uncertain for everybody, and it remains so from March and April. And you have to understand, being a grower in the greenhouse industry and the garden center business, back late March, early April, that is our busiest time of year. That's when we're doing most of our growing in order to have garden plants for customers to purchase in the month of May. So at that time, things were completely up in the air, and we didn't know if we'd have the opportunity to even open. So at that time, growers in the business, such as myself, made some decisions, or had to make some decisions. How much of something do we grow? Do we cut back in the event that we're unable to open? How are we going to sell this product? All of those questions came out. So it started in really quite a terrifying way. So some of us made the decision to hold off on planting some things. Some made the decision to cut back what we were going to grow, because we thought if we didn't have customers able to come in the garden center or could purchase plants easily, perhaps we shouldn't grow as much. And so at that time, decisions were made, and then what we did here at Sun Harvest, and many garden centers did, is we started by offering sales of plants, seeds, everything for your garden online. And what happened in April, online sales really grew, and people, we have an online e-commerce site on our website, and people started coming because all of a sudden they realized there's lineup at grocery stores. What do I need to do? I need to plant a garden. So gardening started exploding in April, and people were buying seeds. We had to restock seeds. People were buying vegetable plants in April, even though most of them weren't going to be able to be planted until late May or even early June in the case of peppers. But they were buying these plants because it was important to them that they knew that they had some sense of being able to feed themselves this growing season. So we remained doing that kind of business all the way until phase 1 reopening started in the province, which essentially came upon Mother's Day weekend. And for us, thank God, when we had the opportunity to open. And although it was a time of great anxiety and a little scary, when we did open Mother's Day weekend, we were completely overwhelmed by the graciousness of our clientele. So yes, people had to stand in line, but everybody wanted to get out. And it's interesting because the garden center industry was really one of the first industries to open outside of the main essential businesses. And so it was really a test for our industry to see how we could keep our staff, customers, and community safe. And I'd like to think of it as a collective effort by both what our staff was able to pull off and also by our customers, who were so gracious, waited in line. And many of them said, this is the first time I've been out, because they had been ordering things like groceries online, and they wanted to get out. They wanted to come to a happy place, come to a garden center, even just to get a sense of color in what was previous to that a really dark and difficult spring.
Right.
So the explosion in the growing season really started in April online, and then it carried on online through May, but then finally when things opened up a little bit, it really literally exploded.
How did you choose to keep your staff and the customers safe?
Well, there are a number of measures we put in place here, and we consulted with our local health authorities and also with other members in garden centers, talking to our colleagues and peers as to what they were doing. So the first thing to keep people safe was, most importantly, to establish an online store so that we could offer contactless, curbside pickup and delivery, which we offered. And once they come in the store, we had to ensure physical distancing, which meant if there's so many staff members working in the greenhouse, we have a large space here, but we still restricted the number of customers in at one particular time. It meant sanitizing carts, physical distancing, of course, and also just getting the product in and out with the customer as safely as possible. All the while, we maintained our online store, and still do to this day, because people found that it's a nice way that they want to shop. There's still many people who prefer to just not come in to places, and we want to make sure those people have access to everything they need to enjoy their gardens as well.
So, what are the most popular plants that you see people looking for, wanting to buy, whether it's vegetables or whether it is flowering plants? What do you see as being the choice plant this year?
Because the spring started off and it was rather bleak and we didn't know and uncertain, first off, veggie plants. And we made a decision early on that, okay, veggies are going to be and herbs are going to be a hot category. So we probably sacrificed some things that we grew that were flowering in order to have a lot of vegetables to meet that demand. And people were very, very enthusiastic about that. So it was really fun to talk about how to grow vegetables in your gardens. But coupled with that, people were starving for color, something pretty, something to brighten their spaces. So when we did get the okay to open Mother's Day weekend, of course, that's prime season for us to sell our hanging baskets and containers, and that just made people so happy. And plants make people happy, and the fact that we're in a situation where this year people are staying home, what kind of things can you do at home? Well, they're going to garden. Whether they're going to garden in a garden plot or whether they're going to garden in a container, a raised garden, they're doing it, enjoying it. And it's really interesting because right now, people coming in a month after, 3-4 weeks after they've actually made a plant purchase, sharing their experience as to how their garden is growing. And I'm sure your audience, if you're walking around in your community, you just have to see people have beautiful yards. They're able to spend the time out there and they're really enjoying this recreational activity.
We're almost to July, and so tell me what people are looking for now.
All right, so annuals are hard to find,
Yep.
but June is perennial gardening month. This is a wonderful opportunity to refresh your garden, introduce new perennials. This is National Pollinator Week this week, so it's a great time to think about planting a plant, whether it be a flowering shrub or a perennial that could add to the biodiversity of their garden to attract pollinators such as bees, butterflies, beetles, birds. April, here we've got, we're talking about pollinators, and in our perennial section here at Sun Harvest, it's kind of fun to think about, well, what can I do to encourage pollinators in the garden? Well, first thing is you can think about, give them a place to hang out, or they will want to hang out for most of the summer. So that means picking perennials that have different times of the year at which they bloom. So something like this nepeta or catmint is wonderful because early June, this will start blooming like crazy, and you will see all the pollinators, the native bees, just clamoring for this little plant, and that's really good to see. You want to see that kind of activity. You might want to follow that up by planting something else for a sunny location in about July. What was interesting about this year too that we have to make note of is that we had the greatest number of first-time gardeners, especially veggie gardeners, ever. And a lot of these people have already fallen in love with plants because they love to populate and create indoor living spaces with plants. So these are houseplant enthusiasts, and it's really exciting to work with these people. And you mentioned, why are people coming into the garden center now? Sure, it's to buy perennials and shrubs. Houseplants, we're fully stocked now, but more importantly, it's to get information, follow up, especially the first-time gardeners who want information to make sure, an affirmation that they're on the right track. They're coming in now and they're sharing their wonderful experiences as to how much their plants have actually grown. And the best part is, you know that in 3 to 4 weeks, depending on what they're growing, whether it's a cucumber, a zucchini, peas they've seeded, beans, they're going to start enjoying the rewards of their hard work and enjoying a harvest. And there's no greater feeling than that. So that I really look forward to. It's almost the end of June and we've had some really hot temperatures. So if you're in your vegetable garden, first-time gardeners or seasoned gardeners, you're going to find that your veggies are really taking off and things like your herbs are really taking off. But now's the time to enjoy them, to ensure a continuous harvest. So don't let them get too big without using them. So for example, in your basil patch, I've got some potted basil here. We've got a plant with lots of side shoots and branches, some big leaves coming. We want to encourage more side shoots and branches. We want to get a bigger harvest. And your tomatoes, if you planted them, are coming along as well. So just do a few snips and you've got basil that you can use to enjoy in a salad, however you like to do it, or harvest a lot and you can start thinking about pesto. But the important thing is the best way to enjoy herbs is to consume them constantly. Don't wait until late in the summer, because at that time you're going to have basil that will have set a flower, and really what you're after are these delicious, lovely, big, fat, full leaves. So this year, with so many people planting gardens, flower gardens, or especially vegetable gardens, something that we should be mindful of and be thinking about is many of us, if we're first-time gardeners, we don't realize sometimes what a robust harvest we can actually encounter. So in order to, of course, share it with your neighbors, your family, if you have excess produce, but it would be wonderful if, we had the opportunity, which we do, to connect with organizations, local organizations in our community, such as Loving Spoonful, and through their food sharing or food rescue program. If you have extra produce, get in touch with them, and it can be aggregated, and they know how to get fresh food in the hands of people who perhaps maybe aren't growing gardens or who really need it. So there's a real opportunity to have a lot of positive things that can come out of a pandemic spring that spurred on a real surge in gardening, and it can be shared in our community.
Moving forward into the fall season, what's that going to look like for you at the greenhouse?
Well, thinking about what's happening in the gardening world, in the fall, of course, it's all about decorating your home to celebrate the full harvest of fall. So that's mums and pumpkins, of which we grow here. But it's also continuing that gardening journey, educating people. So in the fall, people are going to probably look at the fact that, hey, I can actually plant things in the fall that can be beautiful for the next season. So we'll talk about planting fall bulbs, garlic. Best time to plant garlic is in the fall, and things like that. We have to be mindful that we're still living in a pandemic. What will that look like? I fully expect that physical distancing will always be occurring. But again, going back to online sales, if we find that people feel like they are not safe coming into the garden center, then we would offer these things online so that they continue to enjoy. Gardening doesn't have to stop. We've started through online. It's working. Things like our workshops that we usually do, all of these formats are going to change. We're going to acquire our information more in a virtual way, and that's something we take to heart, and we're looking at working on so that we can deliver workshops, disseminate information in a virtual way so that life doesn't have to stop again. This journey that we're on together, we want to encourage these new gardeners because it's wonderful to be able, to grow your own food in your own backyard, and all you need is a bit of support to do that, and good information and good plants, and that next year all of these first-time gardeners will become a little bit more experienced and have learned from our successes and our not so much successes during the growing season of 2020. So we can think about those things instead of some of the more trying things and challenging things that we've had to endure in 2020.
Thank you so much for sharing your enthusiasm and your benefits about gardening.
Thanks for coming today, April.